welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. A little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.
Just like that, the early morning edition UFC 294 and Kicks with Fight Night Picks. As always, one half of your hosting duo. You can always find us at Fight Night Picks, but at Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP. And we look at this card, Matt. No fights have we lost this week, so that's always a good sign. You did have a couple of fighters coming in heavy, one kind of surprisingly, one quite a bit over, and I know there's a little bit of contrast there, but the folks, they're looking forward to this show, Matt, because you've got a big-time title fight in the main event. The first time that this one came around, Makhachev versus Volkanovski, it was long planned. Both guys had months-long fight camps each. And when you look at it for Islam Makhachev, whether he's training in North America or in Eurasia, he's really able to get a good base to him. And when you look at a guy like Alexander Volkanovski, the story around the last fight, Bangtao Muay Thai, you got him training at Freestyle down in Australia, the home base gym, Eugene Behrman in the corner as well. So you're going to see Joe Lopez, you're going to see Eugene Behrman. We'll see if there's going to be any effect from the Hickman brothers. But I doubt it in this one. But again, there feels like a lot of buzz around all of these fights just because of the short notice nature of, well, quite a few of them. And so when you do look at this one, it's not necessarily as much the pound for pound supremacy as we got to get even, because that first fight was so close between these two guys.
It was. There's such a great storyline going into this rematch because of how close that original fight was. Let's say it was like a 48-47 unanimous decision victory for Makhachev, then I think people would still be interested in this rematch. But the fact that it was so close, it was a split decision, and that there are so many people out there who genuinely do believe Volkanovski won the first time around, I know I'm excited for this rematch. I was a little bit more down on it at the start of the week than I think I should have been, right? Because I think we would have got this fight down the road no matter what, just because both fighters are so good. So I'm a little upset that we are only getting it at about 90% of what it could be, but I don't think Volkanovski's ever going to show up just a shell of himself, right? He's in really good shape year round. I know he did come out and say, hey, I haven't been in the gym as much as normal, so that might bring up cause for concern, but I think it's going to be a great main event. We haven't even mentioned the co-main event yet between Khamzat Chimaev and Kamaru Usman, the former champ at 170. That is the great thing about the UFC, the fact that they can mix and match these cards together on such short notice. But it was kind of funny. I had a hard time sleeping last night, so I was up early this morning, and I see that Ariel Helwani is on the Bill Simmons podcast, and they're talking about this card all excited. Bill Simmons said his son goes, I see Usman's fighting at 185. My son says I should hammer the under on Usman. That would be insane. If that is what ends up happening in this fight, I'm going to lose my effing mind.
But when it does come down to it, the three short notice fighters on the main card, Warley Alves moving up to 185, where he was a winner on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil Season 3. Look good on the scales. You also had Kamaru Usman at 185. I thought he looked awesome on the scales. Like, he didn't look drawn out. And then, of course, Alexander Volkanovski coming in on the short notice at 155 pounds. So when we do look at these fights, Matt, the folks over there, they're excited. Prince Vegeta's son, Raymond Lucas, Zach, he knows. So he knows. We got Daryl McKinley, likes the shirt, Matt. Is he a big Tyler Hero fan?
Here's the thing. I love this jersey, but every year I think it's going to be the last year I could wear it just because he's in a trade rumor every summer.
So I wore a Joey Harrington Lions jersey on this show. For real, Matt. XBL on Twitch. Brian doing the damn thing out there as well. And we've got Shah Reza tuning in, really enjoying those prelims. So, Matt, when the folks look at a question mark kicks card, they know what's up. We start at the bottom of the card, we work our way through the fights, and then at the end, we quickly throw the recap out there. The first fight that's on this card, I know folks, they're really excited about it. It's the UFC debut of Shara Bullet Magomedov taking on Blindado Bruno Silva. And when we talked about this card at the start of the week, I can't stress this enough. And I might actually do it before the fight. It's going to seem insane. I might go back and watch more Shara Magomedov fights again,
it's fun
like a
tape
second
to watch.
time.
It really is.
And it is easy to find. And there were a couple of people in the comments that were like, but where did you find the tape? All right, so Shara Magomedov's last fight, he took on a 7-6 fighter named Kashul Vyas. Where did I watch that? It was on Twitter, because it was an 8-second fight, and you watch the entire fight on Twitter. For the rest of the fight tape, the majority of it you can find on YouTube. Sometimes you have to take the characters of his name and throw them in there, the non-anglicized characters. You throw them out there, you find his fights. But again, I mentioned it, I paid the $10 on Fight TV to watch him go up against, in kickboxing, one Mike Mathita. We're talking Blood Diamond, brother. So it was pretty cool. I mean, if you go back, you watch the BJJ highlights where he tries to kick his opponent and then wants to fight him after he taps to a heel hook. Or when he decided that, no, Matt. Cheap Tricks, Dream Police. They're not the people I'm looking for.
Me in my head.
I want to encounter possibly the real ones with that guy on the escalator kissing his girlfriend. Shara Magomedov is a very interesting cat, but he's a very good fighter. Even though he's beaten less than stellar levels of competition in certain fights. That's the key word. The last fight out, if you watch that 8-second knockout of Vyas, that guy was bad. But the fight before that, he had fought a good opponent. So the level of competition's all over the place. Combined opponent record for Shara Magomedov in his 11-0 run is 119-57, which it is pretty decent. And he's taken on, of course, Blindado Bruno Silva, a guy who's no stranger to big fights, former round 1 global middleweight champ. USADA, they came a knocking at one point.
Did.
He had to sit on the sidelines for a long time. He's 4-3 in the UFC, but at three of those 4 wins, performance bonuses. So he is a very good fighter. And to the losses, the only one where you scratch your head is the GM3 loss, but the other two, they're almost forgivable at this point.
They are, but that's the thing about Bruno Silva. I fear that he is falling into the category of fighters to where you can sell the best version of them possible, but you can also sell a much more realistic version that does give away a lot more of their weaknesses. And that's the thing about Bruno Silva. When you just focus on the strengths, the good BJJ, the insane power, the great boxing, like, there's a lot to be really positive about, and that's why this is such a fun fight to open the whole card. Like, this is as high level as a card opening fight as you'll possibly get. And for Magomedov, yeah, I don't think I'm going to get a beer with him anytime soon. We're probably not going to be boys, but luckily that never crosses my mind when I do these fight predictions. I don't think that's going to be the difference between him beating Bruno Silva or not. I love the striking, though, especially in the open cage when he's able to implement the kicks as well. And I think the kicks really are going to be the story of this fight, because at boxing range, Silva has a chance to win this fight. He has the type of power where, okay, maybe the technique with his boxing isn't as good as some of the highest level middleweights out there, but the power is going to equal the playing field in a lot of those situations. I just think that if Magomedov's able to keep that distance and keep that range, it's going to help eliminate some of the power from Silva, which should be the biggest threat.
When we said that in a couple of the fights that were last weekend, and I think back to one that it's going to go under the rug and everybody's going to forget about it, 2 months from now, but for some reason it's going to be stuck in my head. The Melissa Dixon fight against Irina Alekseeva. We said, listen, Dixon, she's really good with her top pressure. She's really good with her wrestling, not like Shara Magomedov. But her head movement's not there. We'll see how it carries her in this fight. For Shara Magomedov, he likes to start out a lot of these first rounds. He moves quite a bit, like most fighters do. And then the head movement can go out the window a little bit. And he is pretty hittable when it comes to boxing. But you want to talk about somebody that can mix it up with the kicks. This guy really is a special athlete. He'll throw axe kicks. He will throw leg kicks. He will throw a lot of body kicks. A lot of same-side attacks for Shara Magomedov, too. He'll go left hook to the body, and then he'll go left kick to the body, like bang, bang. So I know I called him the Justin Tucker kicks last weekend. I didn't realize, because I didn't watch the Baltimore game, I was watching the Browns, that Justin Tucker won the game for the Ravens. That's how many kicks.
You could say that any week, and that would be
he kicked out there. But when it does come down to this match, Matt, you're talking about these two guys, very high-level middleweights, and obviously good to see the undefeated fighter in Shara Magomedov get his due. We have a look at the odds in the matchup. Magomedov, minus 300 favorite in his debut. We have a look at the fan vote at Fight Night Picks on our Instagram story. 79% going with Magomedov to get the win in the fight. And I don't have him in the fight. Listen, I said it at the start, and I'm still there now. I have this fight really close. And I think Bruno Silva can take advantage of some of those lapses that Shara Magomedov has out there. Bruno Silva, we don't see the ground game in every fight. You can go back to some of the M1 fights. In the UFC, what's it been? His fight against Wellington Turman, like, there hasn't been...
It's like we talk about Gregory Rodriguez,
a whole lot of it.
It's like, hey, it's there... But then he just goes out and throws bombs for the most part. I understand why you have Silva, and I don't like the odds on Magomedov, but I do still think he's going to win the fight. I think speed is going to be the big difference between these two guys. Silva, when he lands, has devastating effects, but Magomedov has a lot more speed at his disposal, so I like Magomedov in the matchup, but I'm really excited for this opening fight. This is one that gets you to watch the card.
Yeah, and then you get to watch Victoria Dudakova, who missed weight, take on Jinh Frey, who's lost 3 in a row. This fight is odd. It's odd because... For Victoria Dudakova, you come into the UFC, you get a gritty win over Maria Silva on Dana White's Contender Series last summer, and you blow out your knee. You win that fight, despite having lost the second round handily, you win the first, you win the third. Dudakova takes a long time off, rehabs the knee, goes in there against Estela Nunes, who was also on a losing streak, just like Jinh Frey. So it's kind of a layup. It's a clash of styles. Nunes, Muay Thai artist. Dudakova, grappler, I guess I would say. And when you watch Dudakova go in there, she doesn't look super comfortable on the feet for the 25 seconds that they're on the feet. She shoots for an ankle pick takedown. Nunes slips, dislocates her elbow. That's the end of the fight. So you get to move on. Your record's still undefeated. And then she comes in at 116.6. And they had her weigh in clothes. They were trying to figure it out. They put the hoop around. She put her arms up. She looked kind of like a little disappointed, but you got nobody to be disappointed in but yourself. So 116.6 for Dudakova. Jinh Frey makes the weight. Consummate professional, former atomweight champ over with Invicta. And when you look at these two, Matt, orthodox grappler, Victoria Dudakova, limited boxing, limited kickboxing. I'll even extend it further. For Jinh Frey, a steady 1-2 and some pretty good wrestling in her own back pocket.
But we have seen her get out grappled. That's the thing
it.
At 115 that I don't think we saw as much at 105. And Jinh Frey is one of the fighters who I think suffers the most from not having a 105 division in the UFC. Michelle Waterson's probably up there too if she comes to mind. But for the most part, I think Frey is one of those fighters who really does struggle because of it. Because her grappling and her top pressure is quite secure and quite dominant at that weight class. But at 115, I feel like fighters can get out from under her and are heavy enough in the top position to hold her down. And if you eliminate the grappling from her skill set, it does leave her, you know, a little bit basic on the feet. I do think she is the more steady fighter between these two in terms of her striking, but if Jinh Frey's game plan is to go out there and win a fight based on 50 minutes of striking, it's probably not going to look like the greatest performance. No. And I do think she is going to be able to land straight shots down the middle, but again, it's not going to be complete striking like an Alexander Volkanovski where she's landing head and body combinations. Well, I think that wrestling really does help her open up that side of her game, and if she's not able to use the grappling in this matchup, I'll be curious to see how she goes about trying to win this.
This one all of a sudden gets squirrely just with that weight miss, because when you watch Jinh Frey, if she's anything, she's steady. Like, I mean, you look at the fight where she's going up against Polyana Viana, you're trying to establish some sort of distance, some sort of a feel for the fight, and you get finished, and your hands are down, and you're finished by Polyana Viana with the strikes. So it was kind of different. But when you do look at a Jinh Frey fight, and if you want to draw parallels to this one, look at her fight that she loses against Vanessa Demopoulos. A lot of folks have thought that Jinh Frey had won that fight, but what did her well in that one? Well, again, it was the steadiness, it was the straight 1-2, and then she's able to go out there and really stifle the game of somebody like Vanessa Demopoulos, who, yeah, we've seen Demopoulos strike, but Demopoulos really does butter that bread down on the mat with her jiu-jitsu. So when you do look at a fight like this, Matt, the odds between Dudakova and Jinh Frey, Dudakova is a giant, oh my gosh, open minus 275, she's a minus 516 favorite right now. Hey, Mom, I'm laying that chalk on Victoria Dudakova. Really like that. Again, Frey on a 3-fight losing streak. 88% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Dudakova. I have her in this fight because I think there's going to be a size advantage notwithstanding that weight miss, or not including the weight miss. But it is a tricky fight for her as they try and build her up, excuse me.
There's few things I hate more than a fighter missing weight, but a fighter in their late 30s on a 3-fight losing streak, I would say, is one of the few situations I like less. So I have Dudakova in the matchup.
All right, Raw D. That's aggressive. Tuning in from St. John. Matt, I was in St. John earlier this week. They had 3, count them 3, cruise ships.
I feel like I had the wrong opinion on St. John for the longest time. You go there for like tournaments and sports and stuff, and you just don't go around the city. I've been to St. John a couple of times recently, and there's like nice restaurant. Like, it's a nice spot, you know? It's good to walk around, like...
Yeah,
St. John's nice.
It's weird that 3 cruise ships full of people, there's thousands of people.
So many people.
On cruise ships going to the gritty city of St. John, New Brunswick. Here's a pulp mill. Here's an oil refinery for as long as
The
it lasts.
food's really good, though.
Yeah, it's really strange. Yeah, an odd one. So make sure you check out St. John, New Brunswick, Matt. There's your tourism push. Matt, next fight, Nathaniel Wood taking on Mohamed Naimov. This is a big-time fight in the featherweight division. Naimov, UFC debut on less than 2 weeks' notice, takes on Jamie Mullarkey at 155. He's behind the 8 ball in the first round. He's behind the 8 ball at the start of the second round, and he lands that seminal hook that drops Jamie Mullarkey like a sack of potatoes. He's able to get the finish there. Performance bonus for Mohamed Naimov. And obviously that picture that's there is him weighing in for the first time at 155. But if you knew Naimov, whether it was from Titan FC, whether it was from some of the other regional shows or Dana White's Contender Series, you knew that Naimov was a special fighter.
Exactly.
You knew that he had the respect of the odds makers when he fought Colin Anglin. You also remember seeing Mohamed Naimov getting taken down and 10-8'd against Colin Anglin, who lost all of his fights in the UFC and then lost in ex-MMA, and things were never the same with Anglin. But when you look at Naimov, he's able to persevere. We bring up his fight against Olivier Murad, where it was with Titan FC. It was a big fight, and Murad ended up going on Contender Series and winning a fight in his own right. And I thought Naimov had won the decision there, but it ended up Murad on the winning end. So when you look at this fight, Matt, Nathaniel Wood, he's been in the UFC for a long time. He's been in the fans' minds for a long time, being the former Cage Warriors bantamweight champ. He's fought in big fights. I'm surprised he's this far down on the card. I understand why Yahya peak is higher, just because Yahya is the first Emirati in the UFC. But this feels like a big fight, and I am amped for this one.
It is a big fight, and I think we were both really excited for Nathaniel Wood to make that move up to 145 because it may have solved some of the weaknesses we saw at 135, and that was a big point that I tried to hammer home early. And the thing is, Nathaniel Wood is a really talented fighter, right? Like, I can't knock many things in his skill set. He's got great boxing. He's a phenomenal striker. He's got great speed, great accuracy. His grappling's really good. But the problem is it comes down to the intangibles. He can get hit. He doesn't always react well when he does get hit. And something we both spoke on a lot in the past is he spent a lot of himself in Cage Warriors. So how much of Nathaniel Wood's durability is still left? Like, it's not like he's getting completely knocked out by shots, but we have seen him go down at the absolute worst times in a lot of these fights. So I do have Nathaniel Wood in this matchup, but every time he goes out there, I'm expecting him to win like a 30-27, and then he gets dropped once, and that makes it a 29-28. Then he might get dropped again, and that brings it into a split decision. It just always makes the fight a lot closer than it should be when Nathaniel Wood's in there, because he can get hit by those big shots.
For some reason, this one didn't make it to the Instagram. Sometimes if you do too many posts at once, they just fly into the ethos. So we'll have a look at the odds in the matchup. If I'm not mistaken, they're far apart. Yeah, Wood is the big favorite, open minus 275. He's a minus 333 right now. And I see it from Raw D, and I know who that is, JUA Row 1, saying that Cask and Kettle's good. You know what I like in St. John? I like the Haddock Club at Grannon's. Wow. Oh, boy, that is good. You want to twist on a club, you throw Haddock in a bun, I'm all about it. I do have Nathaniel Wood in this one. Again, I think the volume is going to carry him to a win. But if you do look at this fight, Naimov's got that great equalizer. He can parry on the outside. He can land that big power shot. And Nathaniel Wood, you touched on it. The knockdown ratio in the OC, it's 2-2. And you might look at that and say, wow, he's had a lot of UFC experience. But when you get hit a lot and when you get put on the retreat like a guy in Nathaniel Wood, there's a reason why he's not in the top 15. Put it that way.
If he wins this fight, do you think he does get a top 15 opponent next? That's what I was just about to ask.
I do think so. I couldn't cap it because I'd have to look at who doesn't have fights booked right now. Usually when you throw questions like that out there, they're kind of hard to answer.
I just asked if he got a ranked fighter next. I'm not asking to be specific.
I think that Nathaniel would get a ranked fighter next, and I think he'd fight somebody like... Is Lerone Murphy ranked right now? He's 15th on Tapology. I guess they're both British guys. They wouldn't make them fight, but that's neither here nor there. We'll move on to the next fight, Matt. Guess what, Matt? How about this? Mike Breeden, 159.5 to take on Anshul Jubli. You're on a 3-fight losing streak. That's your entire UFC career. Make the weight.
This is your Billy Talent moment, though.
Yeah.
Like, if you know you're going to miss weight and you're on a 3-fight losing streak, who cares if you miss by half a pound or 3 pounds? Like, you're going to lose and get cut, so, like, who cares? I'm being serious, though. Like, I know that's a wild way to look at it, but it is the truth. Like, Mike Breeden doesn't have a lot else going, so he might as well have a weight advantage. And I don't know if he's going to be able to make use of that in this matchup. I just worry about the defensive liabilities that we've seen throughout his UFC tenure. But I was surprised to see how much he missed by when I was looking at the weigh-in thing, because I didn't watch the original weigh-ins. I normally just Google it, look at the MMA Fighting does up the write-up, and if you miss weight, then I'll look into it and watch the weigh-ins. If you look terrible, I'll learn more from it. Mike Breeden missed by a serious amount, like 3 pounds is nothing to joke about.
Yeah, and if you want my take on the weigh-ins, usually I do the same thing. I read the weigh-ins because I make these graphics up, and if the weights change, then I put them in, and then I go right before our show, and I'll watch the actual weigh-ins. And yeah, Mike Breeden showing up, the ceremonial weigh-ins too, putting the hands up there, looking a little sus, and then he goes over there and shakes Anshul Jubli's hand, and Anshul gets in his face and gets down because he's 6 feet tall at 155 pounds. But when you do consider this fight, Matt, this is a Clash of Styles type of matchup. You look at a guy like Anshul Jubli, he likes to find himself in space to get the takedown, and then once he gets on top, you saw what he was able to do to Jekka Saragi, but he also did the same thing when he was fighting on the regional scene in India. Now, level competition in India, bad. Awful, terrible. It's really bad. And we kind of talked about this before the camera started to roll. The question about India becoming a hot spot and a hub for MMA. Hunter Campbell seems about it, Dana White. Like, everything seems kind of lukewarm. But if you look at the scene that's there right now, there's not much of a scene. Like, yeah.
And that's what I mean. You almost feel like you kind of need the Great Khali kind of type thing, right? You need that one athlete that you can really promote, you can really get behind. That does start the whole revolution. They need a Michael Bisping kind of is what they need. And that would be nice if Jubli is able to kind of fulfill that role, because we've seen it in a lot of developing places, just MMA-wise, right? Every country gets that one athlete that joins the UFC, and then we see the explosion
Zhang Wei
happen.
Li becomes a champ.
Exactly. We see the explosion happen just immediately after, and then we get a lot more talented fighters coming from that spot. So it would be really nice if Jubli could kind of grab that flag and run with it, because there is a lot of talented fighters over there.
Yeah, there definitely is. And in this one, so you got Jubli with the takedowns, with the good top pressure. You got Mike Breeden with the good boxing on the outside. We've seen it one round in his UFC career, and he's had, not many rounds, put it that way, to employ it. Again, the fans have Anshul Jubli in this fight. I have the road to UFC winner. But Real Fight Picks wants to hear it. If Mike Breeden's able to do the round the outside, could you imagine if he tucks his chin into his neck and he sits out there and just keeps Jubli behind a steady jab for 3 rounds? I'd lose my mind. How about that? I'd lose my mind.
I think there's a person, like, impersonating Mike Breeden. I'd be like, who is this man? I have Jubli in this match. It was just, for Breeden, the missed weight, the losing streak, it's just not a good look.
Yeah, it's not a good look. I see it from Pick'em MMA. You want to know what the fans are thinking on this one? 77% of the fans are going with Anshul Jubli in the matchup. We also have Jubli in this one as well. Now we get into an interesting fight, Matt. People were surprised that Abu Azaitar has the lungs of Howie Moretz. I bet Montreal Canadiens fans are going to like that reference. The guy's barrel-chested. And Abu Azaitar coming back off a 2.5-year layoff to take on Sedriques Dumas. Matt, Dumas, it has been a roller coaster of 2 fights in the UFC. He looked awful against Josh Fremd. He looked great against Josh Fremd's teammate, Cody Brundage. Josh Fremd, Cody Brundage. The moral of the story is, don't take fights on around a week's notice. You're going to be bad in them. You're going to be so bad. Same management team, Matt. Jason House, Iridium. But when you look at this one, Dumas, I mean, this guy's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. And he's similar to an Anshul Jubli, similar to a lot of fighters that come into the UFC. I haven't seen it against good competition, but I know the skills are there. So for Dumas, he beats Mateus Peñas over on Dana White's Contender Series. I didn't think that was going to happen. I had Peñas on our Contender Series breakdown show as the guy that I picked out of all of those fights that week to win, and Dumas went out there and submitted him. You look at Dumas, again, in his fight against Brundage, he's able to take care of a sleepy fella after the first round. For Abu Azaitar, Muay Thai, it's a little sloppy, but he goes out there, he lets it bang, he can have steady cardio for a round and a half, and then after that he's beat. If the fight against Marc-Andre Barriault was any barometer.
Are you Yogi Berra? It's too crowded. People don't go there. He can be steady for all of 15 seconds.
But you look at Abu Azaitar again, and I went through some of the fights because this is the tricky thing. When you look at a guy and you just base it off of one performance 2.5 years ago, that's not fair. So I went back and I watched his fights with World Series. I watched him fight all over the globe. I even watched the Muay Thai fights that Abu Azaitar had years ago. And you know what would have been a fun fight? It's a Tapology gray line on his page. And I'm not joking about this, I'm dead serious. Abu Azaitar, Siar Bahadurzada, that would have been a really good fight.
He's so much bigger than
Yeah, but a couple of Muay Thai guys just kicking it, literally.
Bahadurzada was... He was kind of overrated.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
In this one, Matt, I know it sounded crazy at the start of the week. I had Azaitar, you had Sedriques Dumas, but it's an interesting fight that seeds this top 15, this 185 division.
The reason I have Dumas in this fight is I think it comes down to his straight shots and his ability to strike moving backwards. I don't know if he's going to have a ton of success doing that, but if he is able to have any success moving backwards with his strikes, I think he does have a great chance to win this fight, because if he can be the more accurate fighter, especially going down the middle and making Azaitar pay for those blitzes, I think he's going to really be able to land some damaging shots as this fight does go down the stretch. But this is one of those matchups where it is a weird fight, right? Like you said, Dumas has had an odd level of competition. It hasn't been very good. And for Abu, it's been a while, right? There has been a really long layoff. He didn't look great his last time out. He's an older fighter himself. So it is an odd matchup, because if Azaitar wins, what does he really gain from this? Like, I doubt he's going to fight a ranked opponent next. And if Dumas wins, it's a good record to have.
He becomes ultimate absolute Captain Morocco.
Oh my goodness.
They're going to add to the nickname.
I think that's a great idea. But if Dumas wins, you can see them kind of slowly building him up.
4,637 Tapology votes, 80% going with Sedriques Dumas in this matchup. He's a big favorite in it as well. I'd like to see what the people are thinking. I mean, Thomas McWilliams hitting up the super chat. Thanks for the vids, boys. Enjoy the break. We also had a super chat earlier on from Debbie Elder saying, let's have a good Saturday.
Let's have a great one.
Have it as well. I'd like to know who people have in this matchup. Again, Azaitar, I'm switching the pick. I'm going with Sedriques Dumas in the matchup. And I agree with you. The straight shots of Dumas, I think, can get through. But the thing that scares me a lot is Dumas is one of those tall guys at 185 that utilizes the, my arms are out, my head's lean back.
Fat Joe would be proud.
There's no pullback on the lean back, and then you can get hit. And the other thing about him, too, he's a tall, rangy type of fighter. Azaitar with those kicks could really make a difference. So it is an interesting one. And again, with Azaitar, short guy, long arms. He's the opposite of Chris Farley, fat guy in a little coat. He doesn't have that problem.
Long walk off a short pier.
Yeah, both of us going with Sedriques Dumas in that matchup. All right, Matt. Javid Basharat's taking on Victor Henry. This is like one of those sneaky bangers. And I actually, I was thinking fight of the night screen. All right.
It's not a sneaky banger,
people,
It's a, if you don't know, now you know fight.
People are going to be excited about Makhachev, Volkanovski. People are going to be excited about Said Nurmagomedov, Muin, Gafurov.
Where are those people?
They're out there. They're the same people that like Apex
Muin
cards.
Gafurov?
Yeah, the people that like Apex cards. So when it does come down to this one, Matt, the Snow Leopard's taking on the Mongoose. And I know you're amped about it because you talk about the Eminem references to Round the Outside. These two guys can get it done in a multitude of ways. They're both accredited strikers just in the martial arts outside of overall MMA. So again, it might not feel like it because you have both of these guys with wins over Tony Gravely, everything being equal there. But you look at a guy like Javid Basharat, this is a big step up for him to take on Victor Henry. Henry's a very experienced fighter with some very, very big wins on his resume.
And stylistically, I think these two guys match up as well as anybody in the UFC, just in terms of how can we make a fun fight out of these two, because Basharat does have a tendency to wait for his opponent a little bit too much when he is trying to set up those counter shots.
I just want to interject really quickly because I see it right there. It's in the comment section by Branch Above. I mean, you've been out there for the longest time. Henry has little to no chance. If Henry can establish the distance and keep Basharat guessing on the back foot,
but if he establishes a distance, then this is the point I'm about to get to. He's going to get hit by a lot more by Basharat than Basharat's going to get hit from Henry, I think. Like, Henry's distance is closer to Basharat than Basharat has to be to him to land his shots. So if he is standing there in the pocket, he's going to get teed off on with counter shots down the middle, I think. And that's why I think this fight is going to be so exciting. Henry is an in-your-face kind of a fighter. We brought up the significant strike numbers at the start of the week, and his numbers dwindle what Basharat does in terms of output. But I think with that output, it does mean that he's going to be in Basharat's face more, which means he's going to be more hittable and more available to be hit by those shots. I brought this up a lot. I think Basharat needs a finish before I really believe, hey, this is a top prospect. He's a really skilled fighter, don't get me wrong, and I do like watching him fight. But if he goes out there and beats Victor Henry really dominantly or even gets a finish, then I'll believe, okay, not only should he be fighting guys in the top 15, he might even be favored against them.
Yeah, and Javid Basharat is one of those guys. He's gotten a push. He's 14-0 to this point. He won on Dana White's Contender Series against Oran Kalon, and since then wins over Trevin Jones. Where's he at? He was competing like last weekend with a small promotion. Tony Gravely and Mateus Mendonça. That one was a short notice fight. And for Mendonça, he was able to win one of those rounds, or at least in my mind, and I think one of the judges' minds, he was able to get the win there. But in this one match, Javid Basharat is heavily favored to win the matchup. That's kind of the story of this fight week. So again, usually when that happens, there are some of these underdogs that are able to get it done. But 87% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Javid Basharat in this one to get the win. I do have Basharat to get the win, but again, Victor Henry. The thing that we don't talk about is the grappling. And that's the biggest part of his game that doesn't get mentioned because there's been such a short window of fights that he has also had in the UFC. When we're talking about the numbers, and I made the point at the start of the week, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Both guys with only 3 fights in the UFC. Victor Henry against the Kyler Phillips of the world, the champ over with Deep Jewels. Like, he fought a good level competition. Wins over Raoni Barcelos. That one was an odd throw them together type of fight because of the COVID complications in it. Rafael Sunsao was a loss, and then Tony Gravely being a split decision win. But for Henry, you look at it, CMMA, Josh Barnett, the War Master. Listen, the people, they might know it, they might not know it. So the poster's in the office right now. I switch them up sometimes. We've got a PFL Championships 2021. It's signed, Matt. It's signed. So Loic Rajabov, Jaguar Paw, over there on that wall. We got UFC Moncton, Volkan versus Smith, because I thought the poster was cool at the time. That one's signed. And then I switched it up. I had UFC 235, right? That was Jones versus
the number of the posters.
That was Jones versus Santos. For some reason, it's 235 or 239. But regardless, I had that. Now I have the Ryzen World Grand Prix 2015. But if I could put any other poster up here, I'd put one of those Bloodsport Josh Barnett posters up. I think that'd be pretty cool. So again, both of us in this one going with Javid Basharat to get the win, and we'll move forward as we go. Rod D asking about the hoodie. No! It's the greatest band out there, the Mummy Cats. Matt, if people want to find Craig Allen in a real music video, Wolverine by the Mummy Cats, I'm actually out there. So check that one out. It's a good song. The next matchup, Matt, Trevor Peek taking on Mohamed Yahya. And this is a fight where I've had to kind of marinate with it for an entire week. Because for Trevor Peek, I mentioned it at the start of the week. I'm going to read the quote again. People might not like it. I'm going to read it. So he said, I've had, several injuries, that has really, held me back for a while now. And hoping these things are going to fix me. Talking about getting stem cell injections when he went down to Vegas with Torres Finney, who's in his corner this week. But he went down to Vegas to film some of those Contender Series cutscenes with Torres. To be fair,
he's not a public speaker. He's an MMA fighter. So
no,
if he and ahs a couple times, I'm not that worried about it.
The reason why I left the and ahs and I wanted the original quotable and I played it at half speed so I could write it all down was because Trevor Peek got a little odd about it. Because JHK pressed him, like, what are the stem cells about? And that's what he had said. So Pete got those down in Tijuana. It was his first time outside of the United States. Went to Tijuana to get stem cell injections. That's got to be a weird life experience.
Get into some trouble.
Did those videos with Torres Finney, went back home, and then, of course, Finney had the fight on Contender Series. He beats their big guy, Panfarov, gets the win, doesn't get the contract. And then, when Trevor Peek at the ceremonial weigh-ins weighs in, there's Torres Finney, walking right over to Dana White, shaking his hand. Dana with a big smile. You signed 46 guys. You didn't sign Torres Finney, so that's got to be awkward. But in this fight, Matt, I don't know what version of Trevor Peek I'm going to get. Is it 80% Peek? Is it 70% Peek? I have no idea. For Mohamed Yahya.
So you wonder if he's in peak condition?
Mohamed Yahya is the first Emirati in the UFC. Mohamed Yahya is, to me, I don't know what he's going to be in the UFC. He's the UAE Warriors lightweight champ. He won the belt. He defended it twice. He's had really hard fights. He's one of those guys that fights like a lightweight Vanderlei Silva with the chin of Vanderlei at the end of his UFC career. It's really wishy-washy. So I don't have a great read on this fight. I don't think either guy has top 25 ceiling on either of them. I think this is going to be a sloppy fight, and you're at your own peril with this one.
Sloppy fights can still be fun, and this could still be a really fun fight. I agree, I don't project the highest ceiling on either one of these athletes, but I worry about the defense of Yahya in this matchup, because when he moves backwards, he is a much lesser fighter than when he's the one who's moving forwards. And that's the thing, Vanderlei Silva still had that crazy threat of his absurd power when he was moving backwards, whereas Muhammad can just kind of get hit by shots. And you're right, he has been hurt by a lot of big shots too. And not that Trevor Peake's going to land big, clean combinations around your guard by any means, but he's a constant fighter. He's in your face. He's going to eat a couple big shots to land his own big power shots. And if that's the kind of fight that we get, that's the type of fight that Trevor Peake is more than equipped to win.
And Trevor Peake's one of those guys, you know him for the standing hammer fist against Eric Gonzalez, the old Ghost Pepper. Yeah, and how about Pepper X with the boys over at Hot Ones? Smoking Egg Curry.
Mick Foley was on there this week.
And it was great. I sent that to our mom, and she's like, Mick Foley's missing teeth. And then she said, Mick Foley, would Taylor Swift be better on that show? And I said, no, Mick Foley's better than Taylor Swift. But when
Did Taylor Swift get thrown off the Hell in a Cell by The Undertaker? No,
exactly.
She did not.
Ahmet saying we don't look like fighters. Really?
But you're right.
I had no idea. What's better, head trauma or no head trauma?
I'll tell you this, though. They meet me on a basketball court. I'll send that down.
Meet me on a hockey rink. I toe picked yesterday, and I pulled my groin. And it hurts.
That never.
It hurts really bad. Mohamed Yahya, though, again, there's a lot of pullback with no payback. And the other thing about him, he keeps his hands really low. But what you do like out of Mohamed Yahya is he's oddly durable in these fights. Even when he gets dropped, he tends to find himself back into the fight. He's not the greatest grappler whatsoever. He doesn't have good takedown defense, but Trevor Peake's probably not going to be the guy that's going to test that. You have a look at the odds in this matchup, Matt. Yahya and Peake. Peake is now favored, open plus 120. He's minus 176 favorite. Mohamed Yahya on the comeback from UAE, the lone fighter out of that country. 62% at Fight Night Picks on our Instagram. Going with Peake in this one. I had Peake ever so slightly, but again, the All-Star MMA, JHK's interview, when I listened to it, it didn't inspire much confidence in Trevor Peake. So I do have Peake, but I don't like it.
Like if Nerlens Noel and Jahlil Okafor had a one-on-one, like I couldn't tell you who's gonna win, right? Like it probably.
I loved Jahlil Okafor.
No, you
when he
didn't.
came into the league.
He was trash.
Every time.
If Jalil's watching this, he's like, whoa. He just caught a stray out of nowhere.
Every time on 2K, I'd pick him up. You'd have him as like a seventh option. And then you bring him in, and eventually, after a couple seasons, he was a mid-80s fighter. All right, or mid-80s basketball player.
Jahlil Okafor, a fighter.
Featured prelim match, Tim Elliott taking on Mohamed Mokaev. I've never seen a man's eyes look like saucer plates. And we saw that.
I have the last time Mokaev went. He never looks good on this game.
Mohamed Mokaev coming in, 126. His eyes were giant. He made the weight. Tim Elliott didn't like it. He took to Twitter about that. Tim Elliott's just a grumpy old man over on Twitter, but he has the right to be. I mean, you look at this guy.
Yeah, you'd be too.
Ultimate Fighter, Tournament of Champions winner. He got to take on Demetrius Johnson. Did not win that fight. Respectable, though. Respectable. He's got that ironing board chin to where, geez, sometimes it's like, and then he gets himself into the fight. You saw him against Sigurd Lambekov drop him. You saw the glove grab. He ends up winning that decision. He has been on a roll, and you look at that camp change from Tim Elliott, it's got to be a little bit awkward, having Mike Breeden and Trey Ogden there, and you didn't go to Marathon MMA. You ended up going to Next Generation, down with Lucas and Chris Brennan. I got it right that time. Down in Texas, those two guys are grappling aces, and Tim Elliott is the scramble king of this division. Mohamed Mokaev. If Tim Elliott's the king, Mokaev's got to be kind of grabbing for that crown. If not, he's the prince. But this should be a really wild fight and a really fun fight, and I realize that's why it's a feature prelim here.
I don't think it is, which is the sad thing. It could be. But if Tim Elliott wins any fight against really good fighters, what does he do? You said he's a really good scrambler. He switches the fight up. He uses that wonky striking, uses his weird foot movement too in his placement, and then just tries to set his opponents up to walk into his takedown attempts or walk into strikes. I don't know if he can have that kind of success from the scrambles in his takedowns with a guy like Mokaev. I just worry that Mokaev's a lot stronger than him physically, and once he gets that wrist control on Tim Elliott, it's going to eliminate a lot of those scrambles that Tim Elliott is so well known for that does help him get out of such bad positions. So I just think in terms of their styles, Mokaev is that much heavier in the top position. Could Tim Elliott go out there and win a 50-minute striking contest? I think he is the better striker, don't get me wrong, but Tim Elliott doesn't normally win fights that way. And I know it's wild to say, hey, why would he go for a takedown against someone who is as good of a grappler as Mokaev is? But Tim Elliott in his mind probably thinks that he can grapple with Mokaev for a bit because he's been able to grapple a lot of good fighters in this division. So I don't think it's this sense of, oh, Tim Elliott's just going to pretend like the floor is lava and he's not going to go for anything whatsoever.
No, and Tim Elliott's one of those guys. He's been around. You guys have seen his fights. It's like Tim Elliott, another Tim Means. Like there's all these fights where I don't know, my brain's like this. I can go back into that Rolodex and you can just replay the fight in your mind. But when you look at these Tim Elliott fights, there's a couple that you want to point out against the grapplers. The Mark De La Rosa fight, Anaconda choke win. Ryan Benoit, who typically liked to strike, but Ryan Benoit's run after he was kind of healthy wasn't all that great. Jordan Espinoza, where he's screaming at him, that was just awkward to watch. And then Victor Altamirano, where it was Tim Elliott with his wrestling shoes going out there and putting it on Altamirano, the former LFA champ. There are performances windows where you can see Tim Elliott succeeding. We talk about that Luis Smolka fight as well as being one where Tim Elliott was able to grapple and out-grapple. But for Mokaev...
But look at like the Aliskerov fight, though, just to bring up another example of him grappling and not having success. And I know he got hit by big shots in the feet that did lead to some of that grappling, but even in the early goings of that fight, Aliskerov was able to hold him down and have success.
84% of the fans going with Mokaev. To me, it's the kicks of Mokaev if he's able to implement them. Again, he's 23. I was going to say, like, younger spots in his pro career. Those are, like, a year, 2 years ago. But when you saw Mokaev a lot outside of the UFC, who's showcasing his striking a little bit more, I wouldn't be surprised if he did here. But again, you got to wonder how that knee's going, too, for him.
Yeah, for sure. I still have him in the matchup, though. It's rare that we have seen these, early 20-year-olds come into the UFC and have success, but Mokaev, since his grappling is so strong, it does allow him to make some other mistakes in the rest of his game, but I think it's pretty promising talent.
So both of us going with Mohamed Mokaev in the matchup, and then we get into the main card. They want you to pay to watch Said Nurmagomedov fight Muin Gafurov on the fringes of 135. Now, Muin Gafurov, this is a guy that's just been a nail in giant spots. I think Reese McLaren, Kevin Bellingham, John Lineker, John Castaneda, big fights that Gafurov has had where he was kind of almost brought in to lose. Except, maybe not the Castaneda fight, but even though it was on short notice, there was a chance. But if you look at Gafurov, again, Reese McLaren got a title shot off of beating a 19-year-old Muin Gafurov. Kevin Bellingham was coming off a title shot against Viviano Fernandez. He beats Gafurov. Gafurov then draws John Lineker's one championship debut, and he loses that fight, and then he fights against Chad Anheliger on Contender Series. He's about a 4-1 favorite in that fight. He loses that one to Anheliger, and then he takes on John Castaneda in the UFC debut, again on short notice. He loses that one. He gets dropped at one point as well. Gafurov is one of those interesting guys where the Sambo lineage is there, and he's got that to great effect. He can utilize, again, he's my poster child right now for he goes for the leg lock, he goes for the Kimura, and it's not necessarily for the submission. It's for the culture. It's just to try and get himself back up to the feet. And so a guy like Muin Gafurov, he can be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. He's a little bit happy to keep himself out there, but so is Said Nurmagomedov as well. Nurmagomedov is no peach in this division. If he was, he'd be still ranked at this point. Again, the Martinez fight his last time out. Nurmagomedov was ranked. Martinez stole that from him, and it was a really close fight. But Nurmagomedov, I've seen him get hit by Douglas Silva de Andrade. I've seen him get kind of grappled and stuck in some spots in some of his fights. He's a very talented fighter. I think back to the Said Yakub Kakrakhmanov fight where Said Nurmagomedov was getting just outclassed until it wasn't a Hail Mary submission, but he was fighting from behind in that fight to get the submission. So in this one, Matt, it's an interesting fight. I do still have Said Nurmagomedov and Goldman just having fun. You're the one that's watching us, pal. So when it does come down to this one, I think it's going to be a really fun fight to open up this main card. I'd be interested to see if Gafurov can overcome the hump of your kind of the B-side.
This fight, to me, is a weird one because Said Nurmagomedov does have a little bit of that Nathaniel Wood in him, right? It's, hey, I'm winning, everything's looking great, and then I just stop doing all the great things that I was doing. And if Nurmagomedov does allow for things like clinch control in this fight, if he does just not really throw a high level of volume, I could see him getting behind in some moments. That's the thing about Nurmagomedov. I could see this being one of those weird fights where he looks good and wins, but the scorecards are close and he kind of loses shine because the scorecards are so close. And I feel like that's happened to Nurmagomedov more often than not, right? Like, the record is still pretty good. He's still at a really good spot in the division, but there's always that oh by the way in a lot of these performances that does make you think, hey, if he fought X name in the top 15, they'd probably be able to take advantage of that. So I do have Nurmagomedov because the thing I do like about his whole entire skill set is he can make guys pay for small mistakes, be it Cody Stamen, be it Kakrakhmanov,
Mark Striegel.
If you
Sambo guy Mark Striegel.
I don't even... Sure. If you do put your neck in a really bad position against a guy like Nurmagomedov, he is going to make you pay for it, even if you are ahead in the fight. So I've got Nurmagomedov in this one, but it always is a case of he probably is more than talented enough to fight guys in the top 15 and have success against them, but There's just so many by the ways in these performances that it makes you think, oh, who would he actually be able to go and beat?
So top 15 in the bantamweight division. Sean O'Malley, I think O'Malley beats Nurmagomedov. Sterling beats
I'd say the
Nurmagomedov.
champion beats him.
Dwalishvili, Sandhagen, Song
Why are
Yadong,
we starting at the top?
Piotr Jan, Marlon Vera, Umar, they're not going to fight. Rob Font.
He could beat Rob Font on his best day, I think.
I think Rob Font beats Said Nurmagomedov.
No. Rob Font could beat him, but that's the first matchup I
So,
look at and say the odds would be ridiculous.
Ricky Simone, I think Simone beats him.
I don't think the odds would be ridiculous, though.
Jonathan Martinez already beat him. Henry Cejudo, I think, beats Nurmagomedov.
Oh, yeah.
Pedro Munoz, that'd be a competitive fight. I'd probably take Munoz to win it. Chris Gutierrez, Dominic Cruz. I didn't think Nurmagomedov can beat many top 15 opponents, but I do have him in this matchup against Mokaev Gafurov. I think in those in-betweens, on the hot beats, Nurmagomedov's going to be able to pull away, but it is a really close fight overall. And for Gafurov, yeah, I mean, 90% of the fans have Nurmagomedov in this one, so not a lot going with Mokaev Gafurov. So we'll see how this one plays out. It feels like Nurmagomedov's, if he wins this fight by decision, and it is at 29-28, and he gives up a big moment at some point, you're still fighting unranked guys. Like, he needs another one of those big Stamen, Striegel finish type wins in this one if he's ever going to gain momentum.
I'm still bringing up Striegel. If you've done it to Kakhramonov and Cody Stamen, we don't ever need to talk about Mark Striegel ever.
It was over quick. The Kakhramonov fight, he was losing until he won. This one, Matt, Ikram Aliskerov taking on Warley Alves. Alves, the Ultimate Fighter Brazil, Season 3 middleweight winner. He gets that trophy. He gets that contract. He's been in the UFC for a very long time. We obviously think back to his giant win over Colby Covington. Colby Covington had one loss going into all those big fights, and it was to Warley Alves. So Alves is able to get it done there. But again, like other fighters, it's that old Katy Perry reference. He's hot and he's cold. He's yes and he's no. It all depends on, are we going to get the Warley Alves that just decided to throw caution to the wind, go out there against Munir Lazez and just kick the ever-living snot out of him?
And at 185, even if he is the best version of himself against a really good fighter, is he going to be able to win? Like, that's the problem I have with this matchup. Can the best version of Warley Alves beat Ikram Aliskerov? That's what I keep on going back to. Like, I doubt it, to be honest with you. Like, I think him against Imavov would have been a really close fight that could have gone either way. I think Costa probably would have beat him if we look at some of those canceled fights that would have been really good if they ever did happen. But I think this is a really big step up in competition for Warley Alves because of the question marks that we do bring up. If he was that consistent fighter at 170 who was able to build on performance after performance and keep on adding things to his skill set, then maybe he would be a much more different and dynamic fighter at 185 at this stage of his career. And he still is a good fighter, right? Like, he's a good striker. He has great power. The BJJ is definitely there. I just think on the feet, he's going to find himself on the receiving end of a lot of strikes, especially at that kicking range. And if that's the case, it's going to be a difficult fight for Warley.
Well, we know the sambo out of a guy like Ikram Aliskerov. You know, the one loss. He gets hit by that big shot from Khamzat Chimaev, so it's got to be awkward for those two guys seeing each other behind the gates. But when you do look at this one, yeah, for Warley Alves, I don't know what version I'm going to get. So I just hang on to my popcorn. I watch this one with the dogs on the couch, and we go through life. 94% of the fans going with Ikram Aliskerov to win this one.
That's a high number.
And so, again, I do have Aliskerov in the fight. But Warley Alves guy to refit pro fighters. You've seen Barcelos around there. I mentioned at the start of the week, Pedro Izzo with the leg kick.
Do you think Ikram's going to get one of those weird, like, middleweight main events next if he wins this?
Like Abus Magomedov fighting Sean Strickland.
Because they did try to push him initially, right? Those were two really big fights. If he wins this on a big pay-per-view, I could just see them trying to use this to set up a 5-round fight.
Do it in January when it's all right for me to just screw off and not have to talk about that one on the channel.
Just answer my question.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I do think so. Yeah, I think if Aliskerov wins, he gets a fight night main event. If Warley Alves wins, he gets the prelims of a Brazilian pay-per-view. That's what he gets. Here's your consolation, Warley. We love you. Matt, big time fight at 205. Magomed Ankalaev taking on Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker with the hair, Matt. He looks like a brooding teenager. Mom said I couldn't get a mohawk, but she didn't say I couldn't let my hair go long and then get a mohawk. So, yeah, Johnny Walker with the mohawk. We talked about it, in Johnny Walker's camp. SBG Ireland. It's funny because you see big fighters go to big gyms. I think of fighters that go to ATT and they align themselves with Mike Brown or Thiago Alves or some of those Portuguese-speaking fighters, Conan Silveira, his son Josh. Wow, pretty good with PFL. But if you look at it for the big fighters...
I saw Conan Silveira at a camping goods store in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
I learned this here now. So it was always it was at Mountain Equipment Co-op.
I couldn't remember the name of it.
Mountain Equipment Co-op isn't a co-op anymore. You don't need a membership to shop there anymore.
That was
so
a
that's
nice
pretty
store,
cool.
actually.
But yeah, Conan Silvera was at Mountain Equipment Co-op looking at carabiners and backpacks. But for Johnny Walker, you look at who he's trained with at SBG. They've had it built around wrestlers for his last couple of fights with Anthony Smith and so on. You saw it in this one with Thomas Carty, the lefty southpaw boxer who's undefeated. His last 5 wins have been by knockout. Walker's had a really kind of tailored approach at SBG, and it looks like he's found a home because there was a point where he was at TriStar. He was training in Russia at Gore MMA. He was training at SBG. He was training in the States. Walker was all over the place. Now he's established. Now, I think having a wife that's Irish probably helps out with that. Like, she's probably going to want you to stay around for the family. But when you look at a guy like Magomed Ankalaev, this guy's one of the most technical light heavyweights that we've seen. He's 18-1-1. He 10-8'd Jan Blachowicz in the 5th round of their fight at UFC 282 for the belt, but it ended up as a draw. And some donkey out there in the comments section just threw the slander at Magomed Ankalaev. This guy's one of the best fighters out there. He said he's good, but not great. So, Matt, I'd like to get your thoughts on the fight.
The Undertaker said Vince, or not Vince McMahon. The Undertaker was in WCW before he came to the WWE, right? And you know what they told him when he tried to get more money? They said, kid, you're a great athlete, but no one's ever going to pay to watch you wrestle. Because he didn't have a gimmick yet, right? That's what I think about when I think about Magomed Ankalaev. I know he does have a fan base out there, but the thing about Ankalaev is, does he have all the skills in the world? Well, of course he does. I can't tell you a single negative about what he does in the cage outside of his skill set, right? Like, he can kick, he can punch, he's a great wrestler, blah, 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 blah. But he does have just this tendency to take these breaks during fights, and that's what always does worry me. And it's wild to say that because that's normally a kink you see in a fighter who's a really promising prospect on the rise, right? And they have to iron out that one problem. By the time they do get to the top of the division, that one issue is, for the most part, gone. But Ankalaev still does show it from time to time, and it is really concerning when he keeps on fighting high-level fighters. And I said at the start of the week, if the ghost of Thiago Santos can drop you in the 4th round, most other guys are going to be able to hurt you when they land clean shots. Now, I don't know if he's going to fight that relaxed in this matchup because I can understand fighting a bit of a relaxed fight against Santos, right? He wasn't at the best stage of his career. He didn't have knees, really. And, you know, he was moving up in weight. He had fought at 185 in a lot of his career. So for Ankalaev, I understand some of those built-in excuses. I just think if he goes in there and fights that kind of a fight against Johnny Walker, he's going to get hit by some big shots. Now, I got to be honest. If you decided you were going to switch your pick to Ankalaev, I would do it in a heartbeat too. But I like Johnny Walker in this matchup. I think the power shots from the distance are going to be able to at least land on Ankalaev and keep him at that range more often.
Yeah, and when you do look at this one, Ankalaev is a giant favorite in the matchup. At Fight Night Picks for the total fan vote on this one, 66% going with Ankalaev, so the majority of the fans do have him to win. But he reminds me of pick your sport. It could be football, basketball, it could be golf, it could be whatever you want. I'm going to go Andrei Svechnikov. Geez, where'd Svechnikov go for like 4 or 5 games? He hasn't scored. He doesn't really assist on many goals. Where is he? Ankalaev kind of reminds me of that as well in some of his fights. Like, you think of it, what was it? Round 1, he looks amazing against Volkanovski. Round 2, it's like he took the round off. Round 3, he rallies back and he's able to go out there and make a good account of himself and win the decision. If you're going to finish Johnny Walker, I would expect the Ankalaev version against Kutsalaba. We're going out there, first guy to hit the floor, it's over. And Ankalaev, it's not like his chin's been overly tested whatsoever. The one loss to Paul Craig in the final dying seconds of that matchup. In a fight, he was winning. So I do have Johnny Walker in the matchup. I'm not switching the pick on this one. You look stupid if you get it wrong, but if you get it right, you look like Clint McLean. Just take those underdogs, Matt.
Isn't it wild, though? Again, just think about the career arc of Johnny Walker altogether. Like, he was the next John Jones is what people thought. Then people thought he was an absolute scrub. And now he's been able to work his way up. And if he wins this, he's more than likely going to get a title shot next. So it is nice to see a fighter have those problems in their career and be able to rework themselves. Because how many guys go on that big losing streak and then we just never hear from them again? More often than not, that's what happens. But to Johnny Walker's credit, he has been able to rebuild himself.
All right, Matt. So we'll move into the co-main event of the evening. This one on incredibly short notice. Kamaru Usman coming in to replace Paulo Costa at 185 pounds. Usman taking on Khamzat Chimaev. Now, we know how good of a wrestler Kamaru Usman is. We know him as an all-time great at welterweight. Is he better than Georges St. Pierre? I'm going to say no, but that's my bias.
No.
That's my bias. So, I think GSP is the best welterweight of all time. I think it's
Dana White doesn't believe it as long as the belt's not on Usman's waist.
Yeah.
Promoters promote.
I think that the vodka, the pure sang, I think it's a 4 out of 10. It's not good.
Vodka sucks anyways.
I'll let you try. Yeah, but it shouldn't have a taste. It's got a tinge. It's almost like drinking polar ice. But when we do look at this one, Matt, Usman taking on Chimaev, these two guys get it done with the grappling. If they go out there and strike for 15 minutes, that could be fun. I wish this was a 25-minute fight, and I'll take this to my grave. If you can make Robbie Lawler versus Nick Diaz a 5-round feature fight on the main card of a pay-per-view,
well,
I know this one's on short notice.
I was just about to say, there's a pretty big difference.
I know that, but you can make other fights 5-round fights. So it sucks that we don't get this on a full camp with 5 rounds, but we still get the fight, and I'm excited about it. I know you are too.
I'm excited for it. I don't think Usman gets stand up to 50 minutes of striking from Chimaev. There you go. Like, if we get 15 minutes of striking between these two, the fight won't be 15 minutes long. It'll be 6 minutes long. It'll be 4 minutes long. And I know a lot of people were looking into the whole Usman, maybe his knee got hurt.
And his average fight time, Kamaru Usman, just to keep to that
15
point.
minutes.
Yeah, it's 17 minutes.
Yeah. I said this at the start of the week, and it's just the truth, guys. Like, Usman wasn't an exciting fighter at all. He was one of the most boring fighters you could ever watch. Then he got the title, though, and did the opposite of what every other person who gets the title does. He got really exciting. Now, I do think a lot of that came down to matchups, right? Guys were able to defend the takedowns. They made him become a little bit more of a striker. And we did see that area of his game grow quite a bit by the end. But he still has terrible habits in his striking game to where he'll put his head down, he'll wing power shots. The straight shots are really good from Usman, but when he gets wild, you see a lot more hooks and a lot more wasted movement on those strikes. And if he does that against a guy like Chimaev, I just don't think he's going to be able to eat the counters coming back his way. The difference between Usman and Gilbert Burns is Burns has speed. Like, Burns is a really fast fighter and has power in his hooks, has a lot more dynamic hooks, I would say, and a more dynamic skill set on the feet. Whereas Usman, it really does come down to if he lands the power shots, he looks great. If he doesn't land the power shots, he's not going to look great. And I don't think he can go out there and out wrestle Chimaev for 15 minutes. So you probably know who I'm going to pick based off that.
I mean, Jack Hermanson tried to do it, if you remember back to that grappling match in a dark, dimly lit room. Khamzat Chimaev grappling with him. But when I do look at this fight, Matt, you look at a guy like Usman. Out of these two guys in their striking, if you're trying to rate them out of 10, I don't think it's fair because Usman's one of those guys where, as his reign went on as champion, he started to mix his power shots in with his volume. He also
put his head down directly at the ground and threw like this. So I don't give him... But still, that is such a big weakness, and it got him caught, it got him countered, and that's how he lost his title.
As fun as that is to talk about, with Usman, though, he started to mix in his volume with his power shots. For Chimaev, though, there are those wide counters for him, and he's one of those guys that likes to throw the uppercuts. I look at Chimaev as having an advantage if it does go into the clinch. I look at Chimaev as having a physical advantage in this one, even though Usman looked really good on the scale for 185, almost to the point where you go, why did this guy not fight at middleweight the whole time? I know he had size advantage.
I was just about to say, for a massive size advantage over everybody.
But yeah, it is one to look out for. 68% of the fans going with Khamzat Chimaev. It's a fun fight. It really is. I do have Chimaev in this one, but a big fight at 185.
Maybe I'm more down on this fight. Like, I don't think this is that fun of a fight, honestly. I think you're taking a guy with a massive name at 170. You're putting him up to a guy you're trying to give a bigger profile to at 185 that you're trying to give a title shot to, where the champion is, I would say, quite beatable, even though Sean Strickland has definitely proven me wrong more times than I can even count at this point. I just think this is one of those, like, the MMA and UFC is a lot more like boxing than people want to give it credit for, right? We want to put them in two different realms. This is the most boxing thing you could ever do. You take the guy with the big name, you give him to somebody on short notice who is going to have a big name and has a high profile. I just think this is a really bad matchup for poor Usman.
I saw a guy yesterday with his F-150 and he had the little boxing gloves instead of the dice in his rearview mirror, that hang down. Loma boxing gloves. That was pretty cool. Figured I'd share that one right now. Matt, we'll move into the main event. As odd as that was, I filled that coffee with eggnog because eggnog season is back, and it is just the very best. But we have a look at this main event, Matt. Makhachev versus Volkanovski on the short notice. It was supposed to be a rematch between Makhachev and Oliveira. It ends up as a rematch between these two guys for the pound supremacy. I haven't seen that conversation around this fight, though. And that was the whole talking point. There was a whole build-up to their original matchup. So when you look at this one, Matt, for Volkanovski, the camp, it's more centered. Obviously, it's shorter, but it's Joe Lopez. It's at home in Australia. It's not Bangtown, Thailand. It's not over with Eugene Behrman in New Zealand. And when you look at it from Makhachev, you're getting ready for Charles Oliveira. You pivot a little bit. You get ready for Volkanovski in their first fight. I thought it was really close. I had it 3-2 for Makhachev. But there's a lot of people out there that make the argument for Volkanovski. And to go back and watch that first fight, because I didn't have the chance to watch it live when it was going on, That was I wouldn't say it's one of the best fights I've ever seen, but it was a very good fight, and they were able to drop each other at multiple points. I know that they don't count as official knockdowns, but if you drop to a knee, if you wobble and you save yourself against the fence, there's some points there where they were able to get that knockdown blow. So a really close one, a really, really good one. Obviously, I give the edge to the guy who was in a training camp, getting ready for this fight, who is the pound-for-pound top guy in Islam Makhachev, but you can make an argument either way.
Full camp, I would have picked Volkanovski. There you go. That's why I'm a little disappointed in this fight. Just like 5%. Because I thought we were going to get this fight no matter what, because both guys are so dominant at their respective weight classes. And it's just, that's where the path was going to lead. Add another rematch for the title. But for Volkanovski to take this fight on a week and a half's notice, it's insanely risky for him. So kudos to Volkanovski. Not a lot of people would do this. And it also means if he loses this, we're never going to get this fight again, which kind of sucks, right? Because he'll never get another opportunity to become champ unless Makhachev does drop the belt to somebody else in the meantime. But I think Volkanovski is going to make a good account of himself, right? He has every skill known to man in terms of MMA. He's a phenomenal striker, has insane cardio, ridiculous wrestling. The thing about his cardio, though, is he has like Hall of Fame all-time great cardio. On only a week and a half's notice, though, I do worry that it's dropped down to only, like, really, really good, let's say. And the difference between Hall of Fame and really good is, I think Makhachev has that Hall of Fame level durability and cardio, and at least output to his game in terms of not only the strikes, but the wrestling as well. So I've got Makhachev in this matchup, and I think it's a great fight. And again, if there was 2 months for Volkanovski to get ready for it, I would have picked him in the fight.
So I grab a prop, and it riled the dogs up, because they think there's a knock at the door. But the reason why I did it was because, I do think the question's out there. Does this guy in the corner make a giant difference? I think he does.
It is a good question to bring up. I haven't thought about that a lot, honestly, leading up to this week, just because, again, it wasn't as big of a conversation by the time fight night came around, I guess, the first time, that I never thought about it, but it's a good point to bring up.
Yeah, so Khamzat Chimaev in the corner, Khamzat Chimaev, would not be wild. Khabib Nurmagomedov in the corner, the guy with the biggest head in the entire world. Seeing it in person, that guy would take a size 9 hat. I didn't know those existed, but he has a massive...
Oh, this Jair Alexander, like, the big hats.
It's a big hat, it's a big head, but yeah, got that picture with the old scribble at UFC 220 before Fight Night Picks was a thing. But in this one, I do have Islam Makhachev. But as you said, I mean, Volkanovski, the sexy pick in this one, 71% of the fans over there in the chat going with Islam Makhachev to get the win. Logan Fitzgerald turned into the wrong show for this week. So, Logan, you enjoy it. But yeah, I do think Khabib will make the difference in this one. So, as you know with Fight Night Picks question mark Kish, you toss a like when you're on your way out the door. We're going to stack that deck one more time and reload and have a look at these fights that start early in the morning. I'm making bacon. Drinking, contemplating? Isn't that what that was Chief Keef with Kid Cudi. Good tune. But when you look at this one, Matt, it starts off Shara Magomedov taking on Bruno Silva. I'm going with Bruno Silva in this one. Is the big underdog.
I've got Magomedov.
All right. Then we have a look at the next one, Matt. Dudakova taking on Jinh Frey. Going with Dudakova, even with the weight miss.
Same here.
All right, Matt. We have a look. Let's see. It's Wood versus Naimov. This is a tough one. I have Wood. We'll see how this fight plays out.
I've also got Wood, but it should be a good fight.
All right. We've got RJ33 Biker saying, who win? I don't know.
I'm letting you know right now. Watch the next little segment.
Yeah, I have no idea who's actually going to win. I do this for fun. Mike Breeden's going to take on Anshul Jubli. I have Jubli in the fight.
So do I.
All right. If I knew who was going to win every fight, I'd have a crystal ball and I wouldn't do the show.
When I say that, you're like, oh, well, we just get everything wrong, blah, 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 blah.
Jubli, Azaitar, Dumas. I'm switching the pick. I'm going with SD Dumas.
I've got Dumas.
All right.
I just don't have a lot of belief in Abu.
Basharat taking on Henry. I got Basharat.
So do I. It's a great fight, though.
All right. We got the next matchup, Matt. Big one. Yahya versus Peak. Watch this from your couch. Just eat the pop. Drink the popcorn. See, it's just opposite day and it's a weird fight. I have Trevor Peak, but I don't like it.
I've also got Trevor Peak. Should be a fun fight, but not a fight where either guy becomes champion.
All right, Elliott versus Mokaev, the featured prelim. Going with Mokaev here.
I've also got Mokaev. Big opportunity for Tim Elliott, though.
Big opportunity. Said Nurmagomedov taking on Gafurov. Going with Nurmagomedov here.
I've also got him in this one.
The next one, we have Aliskerov taking on Alves. Going with Aliskerov.
I like Ikram in that fight.
All right. Rod D saying, imagine being on the West Coast right now. I couldn't. Ankalaev taking on Walker. Going with Johnny Walker.
Give me Johnny.
All right. We got the co-main event. Usman taking on Chimaev. I'm going with Chimaev.
I've got Khamzat in this one.
And in the main event of the evening, Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski. I don't know if you saw that. It was a tweet, but the video was in the tweet about Abdulmanap when he was talking about Makhachev and the one regret of his whole career. And he basically said, and I paraphrase, Abdulmanap goes, told him when he's going into that fight, don't go out there and throw all your strikes. Maybe do it in the first round, but don't throw all your strikes. And that was the one loss to Adriano Martins where he got knocked out. But for Islam Makhachev, obviously the striking's come a long way since the Martins fight, but usually that's not where his bread gets buttered. So I do have Makhachev in the matchup, but some really, really big fights for sure here.
Awesome fight. This is as good as any fight you'll ever get. Pound for pound, number 1 versus number 2, pretty much. I've got Makhachev, but again, it's so close that on a full camp, I would have picked Volkanovski.
Some big-time fights today, Matt. There's a week off, and then you have another big-time fight night card coming up. Kenny Perrin with the Super Chat. Yeah. I mean, he's a giant underdog, Kenny.
But the thing is, he lands such good shots up the middle with his explosiveness that I do think that's going to deter Ankalaev from just shooting a lot of takedowns. So the risk is there. I just think Johnny Walker has the threat of so much power, and even he's not going to submit Ankalaev. I'm not even going to say those words. So the threat of the power, I think, is going to be the difference.
So you do you out there. Enjoy the fights. The next one, of course, that one is Jailton Almeida taking on Derek Lewis down in Brazil. So make sure you check that one out. That's in a couple of weeks. We will see you then. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.
But it's the